Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm James Jackson.
I'm Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
It is, my friend. You doing okay?
Doing well. How about you?
Doing pretty good, man. Can we start off with the sponsors?
I think we should.
Yeah, I think we ought to start off with our sponsors. I want to thank our sponsors for helping us stay here at WHMB TV Channel 40. Here they are, Tamika and Associates Realty Group, Martin University. I want to thank Martin University for participating as a sponsor. And with Marion County Public Health Department, thank you for what you're doing to keep Real People, Real Voices on the air. Not only that, Lee Cussell and Crawley, happy to be with us and happy to have you. Al's Modern Clothing and Shoes, Northside Window, Gutter and Cleaning, Fervent Career Christian Academy, and His Place Eatery.
And we hope that those of you who are watching who are small business owners, in fact, any business, we would encourage you to give us a call and become a sponsor of this show. Also, you can check out this show and perhaps others that you might have missed by going to WHMB TV 40, and you can see all the shows the last several years there. Also, like us
on Facebook.
On Facebook.
We're right there waiting on you to tap us in.
Yeah, so we got a great show for those of you who are having some anxiety about your rent. Maybe you have already been evicted. Maybe you're in eviction court, or maybe you're still in your place and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do.
Don't leave.
About all this money you owe. Maybe you're being intimidated by the landlord. You've got some rights and you've got some resources. We'll be back here in just a moment with Miss Amy Nelson from the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana. So don't go away. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by Miss Amy Nelson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. And talk about your assignment with the organization that you're serving, Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, your role there, and what you do.
So the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, we are a nonprofit, advocacy-based organization working to ensure equal housing opportunities for all. So most people may know us by the work we do in trying to fight housing-based discrimination. So people who may be being discriminated against just because of their race, color, religion, national origin, gender, disability, or the presence of children in their home. We investigate those type of cases, put together enforcement actions to get those discriminatory practices stopped as part of that. So I'm the executive director. We're a small team of 6 working in Central Indiana. We're the only such organization in the state of Indiana. States around us have several, but we're in Indiana, and actually we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary come up here in January.
You've been busy though.
We have been. Unfortunately, housing discrimination has been happening, and then we also have been working on broader housing issues, certainly, as well.
Yeah. Amy, tell us about what's happening as it relates to over 65,000 or more filed cases for eviction in the state of Indiana, which is, I think, if we're not number 1 in the country, we're number 2.
We're certainly the most for states that are being tracked by groups like Eviction Lab that really specialize in looking at evictions. Indiana certainly tops that list. You know, we had an eviction problem way before the pandemic. The pandemic just exacerbated those problems. The same way it exacerbated problems about substandard housing, affordable housing, as well as housing-based discrimination as well. And so what we had pre-pandemic was a state that had several cities that were the highest evicting cities in the country. We had Indianapolis, South Bend, Fort Wayne. We had a number of medium-sized cities as well as small-time cities. And those evictions never really stopped during the pandemic and have been continuing since that time. In fact, Indianapolis, the city of Indianapolis, is second highest for just the sheer number of eviction filings, only behind New York City.
Wow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, and it doesn't make sense, right? Why do we have such a disparity like that.
Yeah.
And it's certainly been my organization's position that that's because Indiana is a state that is extremely friendly to landlords, to the point where the relationship between a landlord and tenant is just not fair. We want to make sure both sides have equal rights and responsibilities. And unfortunately, here in this state, my organization feels it's heavily weighted in favor of the landlord. That puts particularly tenants, but other housing consumers in other housing laws as well, at a detriment.
Yeah.
And there was legislation that was on the floor or going through the whole system. They were trying to deal with that, and it didn't quite get any traction.
Well, we actually had some cities that have spoken up on some issues and tried in recent years to pass local ordinances. Indianapolis was one that had, a couple years ago, attempted to put a very basic tenant rights type ordinance in place to assist tenants who may be dealing with retaliation for contacting legal services or public health about substandard type housing issues. And the city was working to put some fines in place when housing providers are found guilty of things like that, as well as that tenants would be provided a basic resource sheet about what their rights are. And unfortunately, this past session, the state preempted efforts like that. We saw in South Bend a few years ago who were trying to tackle the very challenging problem so many of our cities have about affordable housing. And they were trying to put certain requirements in place because of their affordable housing problem there, that they would be able to address that by mandating certain types of affordable housing be built. The response was by the state to preempt that and take away the abilities to do that. So what we have are so many items in the toolbox that have been taken away from Indiana cities.
Wow. When we look at this particular situation as it relates to this eviction situation that's going on all across the country, how would you suggest, not suggest, but how would you look at how it is being handled at this particular time?
Well, we need to make some changes there. I hope that the Indiana General Assembly, who are going to be coming back into town here in just a couple months, will take a real hard look at this and really try to address some of these disparities, because so many people during the pandemic especially became housing insecure that had never been housing insecure before. So it was a new number of people in addition to the ones that were already there. We need to see things like consideration of eviction ceiling and eviction expungement. We need to have substandard housing issues beefed up so our cities are able to address them more quickly and more effectively when they are occurring, because the bad actors will drag out a lawsuit and make it very difficult to get the address. In the meantime, the tenants are living there with mold, without working furnaces or whatever, holes in the roof, whatever it might be, because where can they go? You have moving costs. You've got to put a new deposit down. There's so many expenses, related to that. You're probably not going to get your old deposit back just because you've got a bad actor in that. So there are a number of different things. I would like to see also a right of counsel type law. So many people don't think they have any chance in court. And if they have an attorney that's representing them, they actually do have a chance. But there aren't enough attorneys, doing that type of work. So there are lots of different things that could address our housing crisis.
Yeah, and you said this to me earlier in some of our discussions, go to court. If you have a subpoena to go to court, go to court. You never know what could happen when you go to court. And we see some people who are sitting on the bench who are doing some great work in collaborating with landlords and tenants to make sure they stay in the house until the dollars flow down from those particular places of rent assistance.
Yeah, so there are rent assistance programs out right now. Those programs are available. There are a lot of money. They're available through those programs. Some of the gaps are people don't know about those programs that are available, may not feel they qualify for them, or they might not qualify for them, but yet they still have rental assistance-based needs. So that's where potentially other organizations could provide that type of assistance that might be there. But if you get served with an eviction notice, contact a legal services group like Indiana Legal Services or some of the others. Get connected, because having an attorney advocate for you is going to ensure that your rights are enforced. Because otherwise, if you don't show up, the housing provider may seek a lot of additional damages that may not be justified. And if you don't have somebody there representing your interests or saying, no, that's not right, I paid that, or that fee isn't right that I'm being charged here, then you end up with a judgment against you that's going to follow you around into future housing situations.
All right, well, we'll stick a pin right there. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more from Miss Amy Nelson. Welcome back, and we have more with Amy Nelson from the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, tongue twister there, and Executive Director. Before we went to break, we're wanting to get into talk about affordability. Let's talk about that a little bit when it comes to people who are trying to find affordable housing.
Yeah, it's a struggle. Each year, the National Low Income Housing Coalition issues an annual report countrywide looking at housing affordability issues. And I believe nationwide, there's only like 1 or 2 counties where somebody can afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment working at a minimum wage job at 40 hours per week. Our particular state is also problematic. For instance, here in Indianapolis, to afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment, you need to be making over $18 an hour in order to do that, or else you're working multiple jobs in order to do that. And yet, at the same time, housing prices are just taken off, and they're not keeping in line with wages. And we're seeing just housing prices, especially in the last 5 years, just really increase. And a lot of that has to do with who's buying our properties, particularly here in Indianapolis and across Indiana. Indiana is looked upon by out-of-state companies as a attractive place to buy real estate, mainly because our laws heavily favor those type of industry groups. But the result is that if you are interested in purchasing a home and you're a first-time home buyer, or you're looking for a modestly priced home to get started, you're going to struggle with it, because we've had so many out-of-state companies come in, purchase single-family homes that are in that under $200,000 range, flip them over the rentals, and charge really high rental rates because we don't have enough affordable rental housing either. So it's a struggle, and this is another area where we just need to look at this from a statewide level. Our Indiana General Assembly needs to step in and try to address this crisis. We can't just incentivize it. We actually, have to look at some different things and make some hard decisions that so far they've been unwilling to do.
The average apartment price monthly, over $1,000.
A 1-bedroom in Indianapolis is over $1,100, and a 2-bedroom on average is over $1,300 now.
Yeah.
How does that compare with surrounding cities?
Well, Indianapolis certainly is going to be here in Indiana. It's hard because, again, most people look at us as housing being affordable, but if you're not making enough money to afford it, it doesn't matter if in Memphis housing prices are a little bit cheaper, again, if the wages aren't there, to keep up with it. So overall, the state of Indiana has an affordability problem. It's definitely been there.
Yeah.
So how do we overcome if the wages go up and then the cost of getting an apartment or a rental home goes up? How do we get to a point where the people can catch up without that marker moving to a higher level?
Yeah, it isn't going to be just one thing in and of itself, right? We need to, really work at looking at so many of the systemic problems that are haunting, our neighborhoods, and making housing to where it's out of reach for those who want to become homeowners, or those who are forced to live in substandard housing conditions, or not be, or live in areas that they don't want to be in just because they'll be rented to, for instance, with a Section 8 voucher. So there certainly are things to be done. Unfortunately, to date, the Indiana General Assembly has refused to do that. We could have passed a law that would have banned individuals using Section 8 or Housing Choice Voucher from being denied housing just because they use that voucher. Instead, we passed a law saying that you can never make that protect those individuals. And these are hardworking families. Typically, voucher holders are people who are working. They just don't make enough to pay for their rent, or they're retirees, or older adults, or they are people with disabilities. And those individuals and they're not making enough, for their rent. But the state responded saying, no, we're going to take away, even more rights that are there. We passed, a few years ago, basically that rent couldn't be controlled, in any way to try to address that. We became a state that protected the industry from that. Here in Indiana, landlords can raise rent amounts by any price, as long as they give a certain amount of notice, in doing it. So, and yet at the same time, we've been unwilling to look at expansion of a minimum wage.
Yeah.
We still are at $7.25, $7.35, an hour, yet prices have taken off, but wages have not kept up to date, in doing that.
And housing has gone through the roof. And because of that, people have to find a place to stay, renting, getting apartments, $1,100, $1,200. But at the same time, the living wage is not moving. It's not moving at all. And everything else is going up, but the living wage is staying, well, you know what I'm trying to say. It's where it is. I mean, $7 and some odd cent an hour. We need to be fighting for living wages so people can become homeowners and begin to establish family wealth. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about your own personal finances. Does anything go down in price?
No.
No, everything goes up. I mean, just the costs of your household increase. You don't see grocery costs going down, right? You don't see cuts in gas prices if you have a vehicle that you need to get to work. If you have insurance, those costs, none of those things ever decrease, in costs. So, so wages haven't kept up with those costs, let alone housing-related costs. But everything else, that certainly goes with it.
I think in many cases when we look at this, we got a lot to be desired, a lot to be doing to make sure that the consumer in this particular area, especially the area of housing, has a fair shake, because people who are living in rented properties are struggling to make those particular monthly payments, especially during this pandemic. And we're still in a pandemic. A lot of people think that we're out, but we're still in the pandemic. And what we had the first day of the pandemic, we still have it today. Maybe not as severe as it was when we first got into it, but we still have it.
Well, I have some serious, concerns about substandard housing, because during the pandemic, landlords weren't making repairs, whether it was because they didn't want to go into people's homes or because they were trying to cut costs. Are those repairs going to get made? And so individuals have been living in rental housing that may not have been up to code in the beginning. They're scared to complain about it because Indiana has basically said, it's an uphill battle to complain in this area. And so, or they might feel they might be retaliated against, lose what housing that they do have as part of it. What I would say is, if you are living in substandard housing conditions and or feel that you need help, to contact a legal services agency to get attorneys.
Do you have any information on legal services?
Well, I don't have their phone number, but Indiana Legal Services is certainly across the state of Indiana, and Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic is another one. There's also some state bar programs. We have seen here in recent months Attorney General Garland, speak out and ask, because of the eviction crisis, because of so many different crises, to ask that the bar step up and help by providing free legal counsel.
Right.
All right. Well, we certainly thank you for sharing with us. We do have another show. It's a special two-part show. So we're going to save some of this for then. And we want you all to stick around. We have the rundown. And then, of course, we'll have another 2-segment show coming along after this one with Amy and talk about what kind of resources are available for you if you are having some problems paying your rent or staying in your apartment or rental home. So stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. I'm James Jackson.
I'm Pastor Wayne Moore.
I'm Curtis Baker, your producer of Real People, Real Voices.
And we've got some wonderful sponsors.
Oh, yes, you do. We do. Actually, Tamiko Associates Realty Group, Martin University, Marion County Public Health Department, Lee Castle and Crawley, Al's Modern Clothing and Shoes, His Place Eatery, Fervent Care Christian Academy, and Northside Window, Gutter, and Cleaning are fine sponsors here at Real People, Real Voices.
Yeah, it's been a great, great show.
Right.
Discrimination in housing, redlining, just so many things that are going on as it relates to the housing crisis, and on top of that, the eviction crisis as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the appraisal just really blew me away. Of course, I was familiar with that case.
Yeah.
And that was just a wide disparity when it comes to the value of the home done by at least a couple of other appraisers. And then finally, of course, when she made all the adjustments, the value of the home going up like that.
So you think the grass wouldn't cut or something that day? I mean, that's a
Well,
big
no,
disparity, isn't it?
I think the disparity is in this particular situation is that this particular neighborhood that she's talking about is in the midst of economic development. It's sitting right in the heart of economic development and gentrification. And so 19% of our housing is from outside investors. And so when you find a pocket like these homes are in this historical district now, they can settle in and pick these homes off one at a time, especially if they're coming in with low appraisals. Can you imagine that, low appraisal? You buy a home for $100,000, put $35,000 in it, and now it's probably worth $260,000.
Probably more.
Or more.
Or more. But the appraisers, early appraisals did not project that, and she had to whitewash the home, had to remove her African-American roots from that home in order to get the appraisal that she has.
Well, there's a lot of people who would not believe that's going on.
And it is, and we're out of time. So watch the show again for more information on that, and we'll see you next time.